First off, I'm really surprised to see that many people on this talk. Not just because it's the last day of Java 1 after that great community keynote, but also because looks like you guys are really excited about Groovy. So let's see some hands. Who has used Groovy before? Okay, 80%. You guys have done the job already for me. What are you guys doing here? You want to learn more about the Groovy ecosystem, I guess, right? Okay, so let's get started. Well, this is me. I'm a member of the Groovy development team since 2007. I am the current project lead of the Griffin framework. And I have, well, I can actually pester a lot of the Groovy project leads, which is some of the projects that I'm going to show you today. So what I mean by that is that I think I have sometimes a bit of an insider's information on all these projects. And I want to give you guys some of those information so that you can make better use of these projects if you really want to. All right. So let's get started with the first one, and I believe that perhaps most of you already know this framework, Grails. Am I correct to assume this thing? So how many of you develop a web application? Okay, half. How many of you already make use of Grails, the best framework to do so? Okay, a few hands, perfect. So a few things about Grails, and let's go into, I will say, a little bit of live coding to show you how you can make use of this framework. So Grails was born in 2005, so it's quite mature. It's influenced by Ruby on Rails, which gave us convention over configuration, don't repeat yourselves, a lot of things, testing, command line tools, and a brand new way to think how we can assemble web applications. Its license is Apache license 2.0, so it's quite friendly for open source projects or business organizations. It builds on top of a Spring, Hibernate, SideMesh, and on some others were really well-known open source libraries out there. This means that if you are already knowledgeable enough on, or you know these libraries, then you can leverage this knowledge if you make use of Grails. It's no longer close to 800 plugins. I think that we have broken this limit, and it's about to 840, 42 maybe, last time I checked. This means that the Grails framework is actually more like a platform. You can extend the framework by installing new plugins. And it's easily approachable. You can use it for small projects, or you can even use it for very large projects. So who knows which is the first company in the 100 Fortune companies in the world? It's Walmart. You know what Walmart does with Grails? It ships all the music side with it. Did you know that? Did you notice? Is it fast? Yes, it works. So the latest release is 2.10, and this is the one that I have here. So let's see, I'm going to go into a different directory, one level up. Let's see. Downloading Grails is as easy as picking up a zip file, configuring a command environment variable. In this case, it has to be Grails home, Grails, little typo there, which I have right there. And once you have it, you have access to the Grails command. Now there is excellent support for Grails in your standard IDEs, be it IDEA, NetBeans, or Eclipse. There's also support for rich text editors like TextMate, I think Sublime Text too, and of course the best editor ever that is out there, Vim. You guys can laugh a little bit. Yeah, it's true, it's Vim. You see it, did you see it at the community keynote? They show Vim running right there. It's true, no other IDE was present. They didn't show Emacs, sorry. Okay, so once you have this, the first step is create an application. So just type create app, and then pick a name. I'm going to choose Java 1 just because I want to. And this will bootstrap the application structure in a standard way, and install some default plugins that are required to launch in the application. And what's new about, or what is neat about the latest Grails version is that the command line tool in the past used to speed out a lot of lines of information. Now it's only concentrated. So now let's change into Java 1. And there's nothing here at the moment. It's just an empty shell of an application. The important thing is that what you find in this directory, Grails App, is where all the specific components of your application should be placed. Here's where we can find domain classes, which we don't have at the moment, but we'll make use of them in a moment, controllers, views, and whatnot. So let's see. The first step will be to create a domain class. I'm going to stick with command line tools and simple text editors because, well, this is what everybody can understand, and I don't really like so much IDEs, but as I said, there's plenty of good support. So let's add another thing here, create domain class. And let's pick a name. I'm going to create an author here. Now this will generate a domain class based on a standard template. And also, if I'm not mistaken, it could probably create a test for this thing. But you can manually create all these files that I'm going to create using the command lines. The command line tools are just a nice facility. So in just a second, it should finish. Come on. There we go. There it has created author and author tests. And when we look inside the domains directory, now there's the author class, which is quite empty. Sorry about that. And we also have a unit test for it right there, which is also empty at the moment. Good. Let's put some properties here. So all of you guys that already know Groovy, we know that we support Java properties out of the box. So I can define a name for this guy and also a last name. And this is all that I need to do. And that's it. Now when I bootstrap the application, I will have an author table already set for me. And there will be new things that I can add to this author. For example, I can save it, I can query it, I can delete it. But I don't have to write all those things. The framework will do the magic for me. The next thing that I need to do is create a controller so I can visualize this guy. So let's go again back to the command line tool, and in this case I'm going to say create controller, and I'm going to pick the same name as the domain. If I do this, I will harness the power of conventions, so I don't have to configure a lot of things if I follow the convention. But I can certainly break out of the convention and go into the configuration, because convention over configuration doesn't mean configuration is completely forgotten. So it takes just a few seconds. I don't know why it's compiling the source files again. And it should create a controller class and a controller test for us. There is our controller. This is the domain, and there's a controller. There is. It's empty. So I'm going to choose a trick here and add a static scaffolding. And just because I am following the naming convention, I can set that property to true. If I want to scaffold a different domain class, say a book, in this controller, just specify the class name. That's it. Now the magic happens. I'm going to launch the server. Grails. In this case, I'm going to now use it in the interactive mode, so we don't have to pay the price of bootstrapping the JVM every single time we issue a command. And there we go. Let's run app. Let's run the application. So most of the command names are intuitive, but in case that some of them are not, we have a full list of all the commands. Just call the help command, or if you prefer, let's open a browser here. Let's go, let's see, Safari. And if you go to the following page, grails.org, there's a tab that says Documentation, then User Guide, and then we'll see an HTML version of the full user guide. There's also a PDF version of the guide, where it can tell you what all the things that you need to know about Grails, how to build it, how to package it, deploy it, the differences between domain classes, views, tag libraries, controllers, and I was saying, commands. All the different commands that you have access to. Okay? So the server is running at this point, and we can point our browser to this URL. And there we have it. It's just the standard homepage for Grails. We can change it, we can tweak it, we can add CSS, we can go crazy with this thing. And here's our author controller. So let's click on it. And then we have a default view that will list all our domains. We can create a new author. Let's say Graham. Graham has published a book. Oh, it's actually the world name. See what I did there? I put his name in the last name. So I was expecting something else. We defined the properties in name, last name, but the view, the default scaffolding, put last name and name first because it's ordering them in alphabetical order. We can change this thing. So let's say, save it for the moment. Then we can look at the list. There is the guy. I can go back here and edit it. Do whatever I want to here. Okay, update. So let's change this thing. Another thing that happens is that if I create a new author and just save, well, there are now two authors, but one of them is invalid because there has no values. So we have to clear these things. That's why we add constraints to the domain class. The first one will be, say that the name cannot be blank and cannot be nullable. And we can do the same thing for the last name. So constraints have two roles. First, they can set the order of the properties that I want to. Name and last name, that's the order I want. And also what are the types of constraints. If I want this guy to be nullable, if I want this thing to be unique, if I want this value to fall within a range of two numbers, or even your own custom constraints. So notice that I just saved the file and do a refresh. There's still the domain class there. Let's see what happens if I create a new author. Okay, hold on a second. This is supposed to work. Save it. The server is still running. Okay, and if you do a refresh, you still get the old one. Am I getting beaten by the cache, maybe? Hold on a second. Let's quit this thing. Yeah, stopping Grails server. We shouldn't do this. As a matter of fact, every time that you make a change, the server should pick up the new things. And let's run it again, of course. Come on, are you ready? You're supposed to be ready. I think I'm finding a problem with the cache. There it is. Okay, new author. And it's still name, last name. This is not right. Let me do it full stop. Yes, goodbye. Grails Run App, not interactive mode. This time should work. As any other system, this of course is not perfect, and the problem here is me, not the framework. Okay, just a second, and this will be the last thing I'm going to show about Grails because there are more stuff that we'll have to see today. But I'm quite surprised that there was a lot of people that didn't know about this framework. What I like about this thing is that it really helps you to build web applications in a snap, just a couple of minutes. And it so happens that this guy, the whole Grails site is built in Grails as well. Okay, now we have new author. Name and last name. Yes, finally it's working. We have something here. So let's try to create a new author without setting any values. We got validation. And if we happen to add resources for different languages, let's see which resources we have by default. Spanish. I know Spanish because I'm from Mexico. So let's look again at the author, new author. And this time I'm going to add a new flag here, lang s This will be in Spanish. Any Spanish speakers in the house should recognize this thing. Okay, so now that I click create, this is in Spanish. Okay, so whenever you deploy the locale that it's using, it should work. Okay, so let's continue. And let's add gram again. And let's put some spaces. It doesn't allow me because I said the property last name cannot be blank. Of course, it cannot be null, so I will not be able to click it. But if I put the right last name, then it works. Perfect. Whew. So you can extend this behavior. You can go beyond static scaffolding. This is just a nice convenience that will allow you to create the views without second thoughts, and then you can concentrate on the real deal, which is building the business logic of your application. You can either rely on the static scaffolding later for production. Not that many people use it. Some may use the static scaffolding for kind of like an administrative console, so you can use that. All right. So next one. Now we got Griffin. Griffin is to the desktop what Grails is to the web. So it's kind of like a best breed of technologies for building desktop applications. It was started in 2008. It's inspired by Grails. It actually began as a fork of the Grails 1.1 code base. So it also follows the same license, Apache 2.0. It currently has 174 plugins in existence, at least in the central repository. Everybody can build plugins in the same sense that you can build plugins in Grails. It is polyglot aware. You can build applications in Java or Groovy or other languages, for example, Scala. It also supports multi-toolkits. You can build applications in Swing or SWT or the big thing with this conference, JavaFX. The latest release is 1.10. Anybody here has to build desktop applications for the day job? Yes, just a few. So pay close attention because this thing can save your life. So installing Griffin is the same way. Just download a zip file, configure a variable. In this case will be the Griffin home variable, which I already have. And then this gives you access to the Griffin command, which in this case, let's see which version I have. Should be 1.10. There we go. Compile and release a few 2 weeks ago. So, once you have this, let's create an application. Griffin create app. Hey, notice the same command that we use for Grails, create app. Let's give this guy a name. I will pick another one, Java 1. Let's use the number 1. And yeah, we in Griffin like a little bit of verbosity when the output comes. So this was used to be what Grails output in 1.3x, but in 2.0 they changed it, but in Griffin we keep it. So let's go into Java 1. Let's look at the contents of the application. There is also a special directory called Griffin App, where all the components segregated by responsibility go inside. Then we have controllers, we have models, we have views. And the view, the default one, is just a frame that contains a label right there. What's nice about this thing is that we're making use of a DSL for building the UI. So if I want to change this thing and say I want to put 2 buttons using a grid layout, it's just a matter of specifying, well, how many columns I want, 2 columns, how many rows, just 1, and put a button here. This will be the first button. And then another one, the second button. Here we go. So let's launch the application. This is Griffin, sorry. So which command did we use to run the Grails app? Run app. Which command should we use for running the Griffin app? Run app as well. So if you know Grails, switching to desktop applications with Griffin is just as easy because you already know half of the features. And it so happens if you're developing desktop and then go to the web, Griffin and Grails migration is also quite easy. Now we're launching the application. Notice the first thing, when you run a Java application on OS X, what happens? The name of the application is always wrong. This is how you can tell the application is Java. The second thing is that it always has an ugly icon, where we have a nice Griffin icon that is almost not visible there, but that's a Griffin icon. So that you can see the application is quite trivial. It's just 2 buttons on a grid. And we can grow this application and do more if we install plugins. We can also go beyond the default way to bootstrap an application and choose something that we call archetypes. Griffin, create app, cool, archetype, jumpstart. This is one of the predefined archetypes that we have in the framework, and this will create the application using different templates, and it will also install additional plugins. Now we will have something that looks more business-like. Why do we have, oh, I had the cool application already created before, so let's pick another name. This will be, yes, the cool one. Okay. There we go, create the application. Now it sees more things. So why didn't it resolve the Jumpstart plugin? Maybe I need to install it. Griffin, install, archetype, Jumpstart. There. I have to delete the application I just created if I want to reuse the name. Or I can just select another one. Yes, it's installed. Then choose the other one, create app, archetype. Ah, there's a typo. Thank you. CoolTo. There we go. This should work now. So my fat fingers typing on a Swiss keyboard, bad combination. There we go. Now it's doing more things. Okay, so let's change into that one, CoolTo. And first, I'm going to open the source, and while that's happening, I'm going to run the application. Okay. So we'll notice that now the views directory has more elements. The models directory also has more, and the controllers as well. So what happens now is that, there we go, here's launching the CoolTo application. Hey, it's not an empty frame anymore. We have a menu bar. We have a main content there, and we can react to the About menu in OS X, so we have native integration. And there's a new cool About menu, not the default one. And have you guys make use of guest list when working with Swing? Well, this is it. There we go. So all this thing is possible because the Griffin framework is also a platform that is extensible via commands. And I think this is all I want to show for Griffin at the moment. It so happens also, one last thing, that the Griffin artifact portal is an interesting one to show. Artifacts, Griffin framework.org. This is a Grails application. And here you can see all the different plugins that we have. See, one interesting tidbit about this thing, let's see, tag. We have 32 different options for persistence. Last time I checked, Grails has about 12 or so. Well, pick one you like, pick one you need, and there you go. And there are many things that you can see here. This is open source project as well, the Grails portal, the Griffin portal. You can check it on GitHub and fork it and use whatever you want to with this. All right. So next one. There we go. Gaelic. Any users of Google App Engine in the house? A few? Okay. Yes, Ben. I know you like Google App Engine, so you'll like this thing. Gaelic is a lightweight framework for building Google App Engine applications. It was started in 2009. The author of the framework is Guillaume Laforge. He's also the current project lead of the Griffin project. The license is Apache 2.0. Pretty much all of the frameworks that you see in the Groovy ecosystem are open source friendly and commercial friendly. Almost all of them use Apache license or BSD. It has an emerging plugin system. It's not exactly like the one that you have seen in Grails and Griffin, but you can add a few things. The latest release is 1.1, if I'm not mistaken, or it could be 1.2. And some people have said, and I'm going to say this in the most positive light that can be said, Gaelic is a PHP for Google App Engine. What does it mean? Anybody can use it. Anybody can be productive in just a couple of minutes. This doesn't mean that PHP is a bad language. The jury is still out there. But anybody can write PHP applications. Anybody can write Google App Engine applications if you make use of Gaelic. It also provides additional nice features like DSLs. There is a DSL on top of the persistence service. There is a DSL on top of the URL service and the image service. So long gone are the days where you had to work with ugly, verbose Java API. Just use a nice Groovy DSL. Gaelic has a little brother. It's called Caliph. You might have heard that VMware is pushing its own cloud technology, and it's called Cloud Foundry. Well, it turns out that Caliph is to Cloud Foundry what Gaelic is to Google App Engine. It is a small, lightweight framework on top of the services exposed by Cloud Foundry. And also another interesting thing is that they share the same project lead. Guillaume Laforge is the author of Gaelic as well. So it follows that the API is quite similar, even though the underlying services are different. And the latest release may be, I don't know if it's 0.1 or 0.2. But if you guys ever had to work with Cloud Foundry, give Caliph a look. Now let's switch gears and let's forget about frameworks for a moment and let's see. Everybody has to build a project in some way. Which is your favorite build tool of choice? Is it Ant? Gradle. Yes, I'm going to get to Gradle, don't worry. Maven? Oh, poor souls. Do you love XML? Some of you do. Perfect. But I would say there's definitely a much better way. Not just because it doesn't use XML, it's just because it uses a real language, a scripting language for defining what you want to do. If you ever had the need of scripting with XML, you know that can get very, very painful quite easily. So that's why we have Gradle here. It was started in 2007, and we have one of the Gradle members in the audience right there, Peter Niedivisser, which is also the author of other frameworks that we'll see later today. And Apache 2.0, again, you can think of Gradle as a Groovy DSL for project building. Another thing that it has that Maven doesn't really have is a deep understanding of an object graph. So this tool can understand the relationships and dependencies within each one of the tasks that you write and choose which tasks should actually be invoked to create a build. You can also extend the framework because it has plugins, and the latest release, correct me Peter if I'm wrong, the latest stable one is 1.2. So let's jump into Gradle, and I have a few examples prepared already. Let's see a standard Java project. Sorry. Had to take a sip of water. There we go. Sorry about that. Here I have a very trivial Java project. Because Gradle is not only for building Groovy projects, but any other one. There is a plugin. There is a plugin for Scala, Clojure, sorry, C, and I'm not so sure if there is already support for Objective-C, but it's probably in the pipeline. So here we have a very trivial Java class. Wow. Somebody was partying really hard yesterday night. I fear this will happen, that my boss will be gone for the last day. So, how do you build this thing? If you were building this thing with Ant, you'll probably copy the build file from some other project and then adapt it, right? mangle the XML and say, oh, now cannot build, so let's remove this thing. How would you do the same thing with Maven? Well, you can copy the file from another existing project, right? And then mangle the XML or bootstrap the project using an archetype. But the nice thing about Maven is that it gave us conventions. The bad thing about Maven is that you still have to specify those conventions in the POM file. What's the deal with that? So let me show you. If you follow the Maven conventions and building with Gradle, this is all that you have to do to build a Java project. Create a build.gradle file and do this. One line of code. Let's see if it does what it's advertised. So I already have Gradle installed, which is also download a zip file, configure an environment variable called Gradle home, put in your path, you have the Gradle command, and there's another thing that I can show you there, and do clean. Let's see what we have here. Okay, up to date. Let's do a build. Okay, it was really fast, and it did some things. It compiled the classes, jarred them up, run the test, which in this case there were none, and did some code analysis. It follows a check phase, and it built in around 2 seconds. So let's see what happens if I attempt to build it again. Now it took a second. I've noticed that all of the previous tasks have this yellow marking up to date, because Gradle is smart enough to figure out if a task has to be run again or not. If it's found on the DAG and it has to run, and it will figure out that if the inputs and the outputs have been changed. If that is not the case, then the task can be skipped completely. So this is why Gradle builds become faster. Another reason why is that since version 1.0, they also have a daemon mode. So there is a JVM running in the background. The first time you start Gradle, you will incur in a small penalty of bootstrapping the JVM. But the next time, it will be just fast. So if I make a change to this file, let's say welcome to Java 1. And remember that the last time it took us just 1 second? Let's do a build again. Wow, quite fast. Let's do a build again. Much faster. If you are still not convinced, how many of you had to work with multi-projects in Maven? A few. Do you like it? No. Okay, let me show you multi-projects in Gradle. So this project, there's a root project here, and 2 child projects, multi-core and multi-x. I will make the extension project that have a dependency on the core project. This is quite common. So here is all that I have to specify for this particular project. What I'm saying in this DSL is, in the sub-projects node over there, I'm saying that every other project that belongs to my multi-project build should have the Groovy plugin applied. So the Groovy plugin also allows you to compile and run Groovy tests, not just Java source code. And also apply the Maven plugin. This is so that I can publish artifacts to a Maven compliant repository. Then I also specify my dependencies. There's Maven Central, or I can specify any other repository that follows the Maven layout, or I can even specify, local directory. If you're applying the Groovy plugin, you have to define which Groovy version you want to work with, because even though Gradle has its own Groovy version inside, it will not force that version onto your project, so you are free to choose which version you want. Alright, so inside this project now, the core project, I have, if I'm not mistaken, a Groovy class. There is. And in the extension project, I have another Groovy class. This could be Java classes, called ext. That extends from core. So let's see the build files for both of these two sub-projects. Empty. on the core subproject. And here, I have to specify dependencies. The only one that we really need is the dependency on the multicore. I'm just defining a dependency on common slang to show you what will be the syntax for adding dependencies on anything that can be found on a Maven compliant repository. The last thing that you have to do in order to close the circuit, besides specifying these particular build files, is this guy, settings.gradle. Without this, the multi-project build will not work. In this file, you specify which are the names or the paths of the projects that belong to your multi-build. Once this thing is done, I come back to the command line tool and do Gradle clean at the root level, and notice that it actually calls clean on the sub-projects. I'm going to go inside the extension project and call build on it. At this point, remember that everything is clean. Ha! It has figured out that in order to build the extension project, we first have to build the core project. And in order to build the core project, because I didn't have Groovy installed, it pulls in the dependency. Then goes and builds the core plugin there, and then finishes building the extension plugin. Let's do a build again. Notice that it took 13 seconds, close to 14 seconds, because we queried the network and we did some stuff. Now, 1.3 seconds. Let's make a change in the core. Let's bump the version number to 5. And let's call build from the extension plugin again. It recompiled the Groovy version of the core project and then continues with the extension. And again, if I do a build once more time, then everything is up to date. How cool is that? I can, for this guy, because I added Maven support, called Gradle install. This will generate the jars for me and put the POM files. They should be, if they are not in the root, no, they are in the subprojects. Multi-core, I can actually see them here. The POM file for the core project using the default information that we have. And for the extension project, it has the dependencies on common slang and my own multi-core project right there. All of this, of course, is tweakable. The last thing is great. The last feature that I want to show for Gradle is great for CI environments. Because what if you cannot install Gradle on Jenkins? For some reason, you are not a system administrator and you cannot install Gradle on the machine that is built in Jenkins. So what you do is that there is a special file created right here. Well, we don't have it. I think I have it on another build file. I will copy it, or do I have it in another one? Hold on a second. I just want to make sure that I have it on another one. That's simple. No, there's no the wrapper. Okay, I'm going to copy it from another Gradle build file that I have. GitHub, Griffin. So happens that Grails and Griffin are built with Gradle. So I know what to do with them. Build.gradle, locate the wrapper, here it is. I'm going to copy this task definition into my root project. There we go. I think this should be Gradle 1.2. Then once we do this, which is kind of like a recipe, let's call Gradle wrapper. We have to bootstrap a command tool that is called wrapper. And now I have a new series of files right here, Gradle W and Gradle WBath, also this jar. If you check in these files into your project, then you can call them from the CI environment, just like this. Gradle W, and the same commands that you will do with the Gradle command. So what this guy does is it tries to figure out if you already have a version of Gradle compatible installed. If it doesn't, it will download it from the network, then configure it in a way and put it in a default home directory, and then continue the job. So you can build a project with Gradle and then ship it to a teammate that doesn't have Gradle installed. As long as you have the wrapper, then anybody can build this project. This is something that certainly not the other build tools provide. Yeah. I'll let this guy run in the background and let's continue with the next one, and then we can come back to it. So,
one question.
Yes?
What about IDE support?
The question is, what about IDE support? The Gradleware team is actively looking into it. There is good support in NetBeans, in Eclipse STS, and IDEA. But it certainly can be improved, and they are actively looking into it. Yes, another question.
Does it support scoping just like Maven?
Does it support scoping like Maven? Yes, Gradle has this notion of configurations. As a matter of fact, the Groovy library that we had to add is one of the internal configurations that the Groovy plugin adds to our build. So Maven has just 5 or 6 scopes. With Gradle, you can have as many as you want. You can have custom ones. Correct me if I'm mistaken, Peter. Is that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Was another question here?
Yeah, I thought there was also an option there that allows you to generate the IDE files for you so that you can import it to IDE.
Yes, exactly. So let's go into this multi-project file, and at the top.
Does it do for NetBeans too? Because I was not sure.
NetBeans has a plugin.
NetBeans has a plugin, yes.
Like Maven projects, it will just read it and it's going to be like magic once you install the plugin.
It's 7.3 or 7.2?
No, 7.2.
The plugin was created at DevBox 2011, last year. So it's really good. So if I add these 2 dependencies here and these 2 plugins, IDEA and Eclipse, see, it finished. So now I'm going to use the wrapper. Let's clean this so that everybody can see it. I'm going to use the wrapper now and call IDEA. This will generate IDEA project files for me. And if I do the same thing, it's downloading what I need. There we go. I can do the same thing for Eclipse.
But you can't do it for NetBeans, is it?
I don't think there's a NetBeans plugin for Gradle itself.
It's a NetBeans plugin.
It's a NetBeans plugin for Gradle, not the other way around. And this generates... am I in the right place? They are hidden files.
IDEA can actually import
There we go.
the project from the Gradle file itself, so you don't even need to do this.
Yes, correct. So IDEA can also import an existing project, so they can import Maven, and it can also import Gradle. True. And they have a special visualization for Gradle projects, at least for the dependencies, last time I checked. All right. So what if you are not able to use Gradle and you are still stuck with Ant? Well, there is a nicer version which is called Gantt. Gantt is the groovier version of Ant. Both Grails and Griffin use it for the command line tool. So the Grails command and the Griffin command use Gantt under the covers. And I think we are only the biggest open source project that makes use of Gantt because, believe it or not, the Gantt build uses Gradle to build itself. Gantt, it's still, I would say it's kind of like its swing. It's in maintenance mode. There are so often so many small features that may be added to it, so making sure that it's compatible with the latest Groovy version, but no new groundbreaking features will be added to it. But you still can use it. But think of Gantt as Ant, which Ant is great that you can tell it everything that you want to do, but it's bad because it's like a guy that doesn't remember because you have to tell it everything you want to do. And worst of it, you have to do it in XML. Take XML away, put Groovy in, that's Gantt. Next one. Oh, I switched too fast. Let's change into testing. Anybody here has previous experience with behavior-driven development? Everybody knows what behavior-driven development is or supposed to be? Some people claim behavior-driven development is test-driven development done right. So what you usually do is just sit next to your customer, your stakeholder, and write down stories. And from the stories, then you can fill out the blanks with code. There are many options out there. Perhaps one of the most well-known in the non-Java space is Cucumber from Ruby, which you can run in the JVM using JRuby. Or you can pick this one, ECB. ECB is a behavior-driven development framework. It started in 2008, also Apache license 2. It has good IDE integration with Eclipse and some IDE integration in IDEA. I'm not so sure about NetBeans. There are plugins for Grails and Griffin. This means that you can run ECB scenarios in Grails and ECB scenarios in Griffin. And it so happens that I have one of these things prepared. But before I move into ECB, I also want to move into the other testing framework that we have. That's where I can say, there's the author, Peter Niedivisser, Spock. And when I say Spock, yes, I mean this guy. So a Spock is a testing DSL. It's not just a testing library. Think of it as JUnit meets RSpec and some Groovy magic. And the latest release is 0.6, and I had it from good faith that the next release is just a few hours away, Peter, a few days? Maybe. It's close, very, very close. So, not to put you on the hard spot right here, right? So let's change into this directory that I already have. This is a Griffin application. I love Griffin. Of course, I'm biased. Let's look at the tests. Here I have a story. This is my ECB story. So what I have here is a Groovy script, and I have a series of definitions here, and a scenario with a textual representation. Hey, a dictionary service should be able to find the word Griffin. And then a series of steps separated by given, when, and then. You can see that the format is name of the step, some string, and then a closure. Inside that closure, that block, is where you put the real code that exercises the production code. This will be the testing code. So if we read this thing, we just get the descriptions, but if we run it, we will not only get a textual report of all the steps that we have, but also the execution of the code. Now, this may not look so different from what you are used to. Let me show you the Spock version. It actually has more scenarios. What I like about Spock is that it challenges what you understand from the Groovy language and from the JVM. Because notice what are those method names. They are strings. Groovy per se does not allow this. It's the JVM that allows it. So what Spock does is one crazy thing. It talks to the compiler and say, hey, you are no longer in charge. I'm going to do what I want to do and what I need to do with the bytecode, and this is what I want to do. Boom. And it puts everything in such a way that you can assert code without making use of the assert keyword. It's just an implicit keyword because you are inside a special block here using labels. Now, if you found power asserts in Groovy 1.6 useful, you can thank the Spock framework because they were born in the Spock framework. Here I have another set of blocks. Here's where I can expect that some definition, some variable will have a special value, may be equal to this service code. And notice that in this other block, I have something that looks like a table, like a data table. When the column names, it so happens to match the variable names that I'm making use of the assertions. So what's going to happen in this method is that for every row that is there, the word variable will take this value, and then the definition value will take this value. So this test is actually 3 different tests. And if I use the unroll annotation, I can even change the text of this method into this. I make sure that this text is substituted with the real value of the variable given that particular iteration. So I'm going to run the tests and see what we get as the result in the reports. This should be done by using Griffin test app. And let's run all the tests. I expect some of them to fail because I put it so that they will fail and show you what happens in that case. Let's see. These were unit tests? Yes. Okay. So there we go. We had 3 unit tests happening. Then 1 ECB story. Then we had 3 Spox tests happening and some other stuff that is going over there. Okay, I will let it finished. Are you done? One more time. Okay, there we go. It's done. So I can open the reports. Target test report in HTML index. And there I see there's a failure that I was telling you. A regular specification, like the one we had. Notice that the method name now uses the real values substituted from each iteration. This is definitely much better. Now the story report is found in another directory, in another file. This should be test reports, is it ECB? No, HTML. ECB in unit. There we go. Here is a report that we as developers love that has numbers and whatnot. And this is the report that the stakeholders like because this is the language that they understand. All right. Let's go back. We're almost there, guys. We have a couple more things to see. Konark. Konark is a static code analysis tool. There are plugins for Grails and Griffin and even Gradle. The check phase that we saw earlier when running Gradle. If you're running Groovy code, then it will use Konark to check your code. Or if you're running Java, you use checkstyle. Now you can think of Konark as PND meets checkstyle meets findbox for Groovy. It's highly extensible. You can create your own rules. And it also has a little brother called Gmetrics. Gmetrics provides basic metrics for your code, like code cyclomatic complexity. And if you happen to run your project, it doesn't matter if it's Gradle or not, if you run your project with Cobertura and Gmetrics, you can calculate the crap metric. You can go to crap4j.org and you can see what you can read about what is a crap metric. Then I also would like to introduce gparse. This is a library for doing concurrent operations. Now, you probably have heard of Scala before, and for a while, or maybe for a couple of years, the Scala people have been pushed actors as the silver bullet for solving concurrency problems. That was before. Now they have more options. Definitely, there are no silver bullets. So that's why gparse not only delivers the actor model, but also other stuff. Like, and we have one of the authors, one of the members of gparse at the back, Dirk Koenig. I don't know if we have STM, but we certainly have data flow. And I don't have an example here, but what's great about gparse is that in some cases it's a DSL on top of the fork join framework that is provided in JDK 7. So that's good. And if there is in the future integration with OpenCL, believe me that gparse will be able to do that too. There are other projects that we see, and we're almost out of time. There is Ratpack, which is a minimalist web framework. In the Rails space, we have Sinatra. In the Groovy space, we have Ratpack. So it's pretty much the same thing. You only define some routes, and then you're off to go. It doesn't provide domain classes. It doesn't provide persistency. You have to bring that into your application if you really need it. So Ratpack is a nice way to build REST-based interfaces. The other project that I do have an example here is Gcontracts. And let's see that in the Groovy console. I think I have it in one level up. Yes, Groovy console, Gcontracts, this contracts test. Gcontracts delivers design by contract on Groovy source code. It makes use of annotations, smaller actually. There we go. I hope that is visible at the back. So what it does is, if you annotate your class with add invariant, add requires, and add ensures, you can define class invariants, preconditions, and postconditions for your methods. Now, I know this is a very trivial example where my preconditions and postconditions are pretty much what the business code is there. But let's see. I can create an account, and the amount has to be bigger than 0. And at the end, the balance property of my account has to be the same as the amount I send as an argument to the constructor. If I deposit something, the amount has to be bigger than 0, and the new balance has to be equal to the old balance plus what I had just deposited. And if I withdraw, I cannot withdraw a negative number, and I cannot withdraw less than I have on my account. So once that I have this thing set up, I could create an account and then deposit 1,000 actually euros, or some other currency, and then withdraw 10 from it. So if I run it, it runs fine. You can see at the bottom barely that balance is 1,000, and then after withdrawing it's 990. Let's see if I try to create an account with negative amounts. I don't know why you want to do it. What, do you want to own the bank before actually having something with them? I don't think so. So yes, this guy throws an exception, say there is a precondition validation here. Okay, let's return to a positive value. Let's deposit some more and then try to ask the perhaps the bank for a loan. I want to deposit to withdraw 5,000. Of course, my account has less than that, and then it fails. Again, another precondition. A nice thing about G contracts is it also makes use of power assertions, so you can know exactly where the failure is. Now, contracts are not a substitute for proper unit testing, but they are a very nice addition and complement to doing unit and integration testing. There are more projects that I can show you, but there's definitely not enough time in 1 hour. So you are more than welcome to ask any questions that you have, and you can send me any emails if you have questions regarding what we've seen today or any other Groovy projects. I'm really into the Groovy ecosystem, so just let me know. Thank you very much. So there's a question right here at the front.
Yeah, what about Groovy++?
What about Groovy++? Groovy++ is a project that provides a static compilation, but you might have heard that Groovy 2.0 already provides a static compilation and static type checking. So is there room for both implementations? Well, the Groovy++ project is still out there, but I don't think it's now is being actively maintained anymore.
Are these slides up?
Are these slides up? Yes, they are. They are in a SlideShare, and they will be up at the Java one. I will also tweet them when they are ready.
Do you participate in
If I participate in Rent a Canoe? Yes, I'm a canoe. There is this program called Rent a Canoe. You can hire us for free for half a day. We can come to your company and do pair programming. Of course, this is a much better offer for people that are currently located in Europe, but we have done it in anywhere around the world. So if you are willing to have us, then we'll be there. Thank you very much again.